Episode 1 of Euphoria Season 2 starts in a very different direction to what we've seen before. A cold bit of narration turns the attention across to Fezco, and in particular his grandmother. She shoots the club owner in both his thighs, barely blinking while doing so, as he sits with his penis out, screaming. With the young Fezco in the back of her car, this blonde-haired guardian isn't exactly a great role model, but teaches Fezco everything he needs to know about drug dealing. Now, with his grandmother absent, at least emotionally, Fezco is left to deal with his new brother, Ashtray. No matter how unconventional this setup is though, for them they're a family. At least to begin with. When his grandmother dies, Fezco is left to deal with the whole family business on his own, and simultaneously looking after Ashtray too, whom he regards as a blood brother. Now, one of their customers, as we know, happens to be Rue, who we see in the backseat rapping while very clearly high. Now we're back in the present, on New Year's to be precise, as Ashtray and Fezco are angsty as they head to a deal. Imploring Rue to stay in the car with a girl called Faye, she starts taking heroin. The girls are immediately grabbed and taken inside, where they meet hot-headed Bruce, the man in charge. Paranoid, he demands everyone strip off to show they don't have a wire on them. While Rue is initially hesitant, Bruce throws her in the shower and demands she strip. Fezco eventually vouches for Rue's integrity. She may fuck around, but she's not an addict, he says. Now once the deal goes down and the trio head back in their car, Fezco calls out Rue's nonchalance and laughter, reminding her that this is serious business. Meanwhile, big drama ensues at the New Year's Eve party. Cassie goes rogue and heads off to the shop alone, leaving Maddie to scramble around trying to find her. She's not picking up her phone either, and part of that comes down to Nate. He chats up Cassie outside and offers her a ride. Drinking while driving, Nate begins ploughing down the road at breakneck speed, eventually reaching over 100 miles an hour. When they eventually arrive at the party, Cassie and Nate end up kissing, getting hot and heavy in the bathroom. The thing is, Maddie shows at the door, pounding and asking to be let in. Cassie eventually hides in the bath, hand on her mouth, while the shower curtain is drawn. Elsewhere, Fezco starts talking to Lexi, commenting how he likes her name. The pair start to grow closer together, discussing their own views on religion and life. They're obviously very different people, but it's a really nice moment that shows a bit of vulnerability from Fezco, especially when his ideals are challenged. Now, Fezco eventually admits that talking to her is the highlight of his whole year, managing to get her phone number in the process. Now, Rue circles the periphery of the party, continuing to take drugs and fly off the deep end. Jules begins to worry, trying to find Rue, who keeps taking drugs. Now, back in the bathroom, Cassie is saved by her phone buzzing. Maddie leaves the bathroom with the sleazy partygoer trying to hook up with her, giving Cassie a window of opportunity to leave, despite another partygoer arriving and using the toilet. Now the time comes for Fezco and Ashtray to get to work, and they ask Rue to join them. With a minute until midnight, Jules learns that Rue relapsed the night she left, and she's devastated. As the lights pulsate, Rue opens up to Jules and apologises for being mean initially. Rue has been having a rough time of it, but it's nothing compared to what's happening with Fezco and Nate. As a crowd cheer a new year, Fezco beats Nate down to a pulp, smashing a glass over his head and pummeling his face. Given his promise to kill him next time they meet, that promise is almost carried out, only stopped by others pulling him off. Lexi can only watch in horror as Nate is dragged outside. Episode 2 of Euphoria Season 2 begins right after Nate's brutal beating at the hands of Fezco. With blood staining his face, Nate is rushed to hospital as he questions his conflicting feelings towards the two women in his life. On the one hand, there's Maddie. She's obviously his high school sweetheart, and Maddie has always been there for him, but also brought out the worst side of his persona. On the other hand, there's Cassie. During his delirious state, Nate flirts with the idea of love and sees himself spending his whole life with her. In doing so, this would also break the family cycle of messing up relationships. Now, Nate snaps out of his fantasy though when he remembers that Maddie is in possession of the disc. Still, that doesn't stop him from letting his mind wander back to Cassie. Now, the first day of the school year begins, right after New Year, as Rue reconnects with Jules. Everything is fine until Rue notices Elliot, the boy from the party whom she did drugs with. That's a problem, given he could destroy their relationship if he knew that Elliot and Rue had been spending time together doing drugs. Jules can hardly contain her disappointment, believing Rue has a crush on him. She takes off to the bathroom, trying to hold back her tears. Meanwhile, a love triangle begins to brew. Cassie and Nate's hookup plays on the former's mind, feeling guilty that Maddie and Nate are sorta together, and jealous over Nate's nice messages he's sending to Maddie. The thing is, if Maddie found out the truth about Cassie, she would probably kill her. Or at least beat her to an absolute pulp anyway. This problem is only exacerbated that night when Nate's dad confronts Cassie and threatens to phone the police unless she reveals what happened to Nate. She eventually caves, knowing her own message to Nate that night about them having sex could well be leaked if the police get involved. So naturally, she reveals that Fezco was responsible for the beating. Now Nate heads out with Cassie and the pair drive together in secret, with Maddie struggling to get through to either of them. They arrive at a secluded area where Nate tells her that what happened was a mistake and never should have happened. They can't see each other anymore or speak about what happened. That is until he follows her and the pair kiss again. Elsewhere, Kat and Ethan's relationship is facing problems, away from the facade of perfectness they presented to the school. Now Kat wants more spontaneous lovemaking sessions, typified by her fantasy about a big rugged man having his way with her. Now these problems start to manifest themselves as Kat suffers from depression and struggles to make sense of what she really wants. Now that night, Jules, Maddie and Kat all head out bowling together. While Maddie and Jules marvel at the perfect relationship Kat and Ethan have, obviously unaware of Kat's woes, Maddie reveals that she's going to get back with Nate. Meanwhile, Fezco and Ashtray have an unwanted house guest. It's Faye. After evading the police following her, pushing the motel manager off the roof, she's now living with them. The trouble is, this causes friction between him and Lexi, who show up at Fezco's house and see the pair together. She immediately believes they're a couple and can hardly contain her disappointment. And Nate's dad arrives in the shop, hand in pocket, and begins questioning Fezco. It's certainly an unnerving moment as Ashtray fishes out the gun from a cereal box. Instead of brandishing a gun though, he pays for his goods and tells Fezco that he's a concerned father before leaving. Now while Fezco is paranoid that Nate's dad is going to come after them, back home Nate tells his dad exactly why Fezco beat him. When he asks whether Nate has the tape or not, he's silent, debating over whether to reveal the truth or not. Episode 3 of Euphoria Season 2 starts with a look at Cal Jacobs and his relationship with best friend Derek. It's very clear that his best friends have more on their minds. Despite his affection for Derek, Cal ends up hooking up with a girl called Marsha. Derek also gets a girl of his own, leading to the four getting along like a house on fire. The thing is, the relationship these two have together is palpable, and as they head out together to a bar one night, their dancing beautifully paves way for hugging and a kiss. Now these feelings have clearly been festering for a while, and Cal struggles to hold back tears as they embrace. The lyrics to the song in the background, "They Can Never Tear Us Apart," is certainly bittersweet, as we know that's exactly what happens. Now that tearing comes from Cal finding out Marsha is pregnant, and that news tears his heart to pieces as he hangs up and starts crying. Now back in the present, we open our timeline with Rue dancing about her room and the house. Gia is actually sitting on her laptop in the living room and sees her. Realising that Rue is high, Gia calls her out for it and the pair inevitably fight. The thing is, this is all a ruse, as we see her spinning the drug taking into something that helps her with anxiety. Specifically that she's kicking her harder drugs by relying solely on weed. It's enough to convince Gia, and everyone else at school too, that this is what's going on with her. Jules though continues to suspect Elliot has more than friendship on his mind. Through an interrogation, complete with shining lamp and pressing questions, Jules seems to come around a little, believing he genuinely does want to be friends. Now meanwhile, we see a bit more about Lexi's backstory too. The reason she froze during the Fezco and Cal situation is that she's an observer and has been all her life. In order to get her feelings down, she's taken to writing. Now another character that's observing here is Cassie, who puts a lot of effort into getting ready for school every day. With 4 AM alarms, she tries her best to grab Nate's attention. Well, she eventually does, but only because she's wearing the same outfit as Maddie. The next day, Lexi's writing manifests itself into a play of Oklahoma, which everyone believes Cassie is auditioning for given her outfit. There's a beautifully written, bouncy bit of dialogue here, as all our main characters join together in the girls' bathroom and begin questioning Cassie. She eventually snaps, admitting she's in love with Nate Jacobs, but that's not what she actually says. Instead, this little scene plays out in her head and she stays quiet, staring right on ahead. Now the dynamic between Cassie and Maddie continues to simmer here, with the former playing the best friend and obviously being Nate's secret lover. Yep, Cassie has been sleeping with him now for the last 3 weeks over at Nate's place. Cal, however, is haunted by the disc. This is a big part of his motivation this season, of course, and he decides to try and get it back from Fezco. Now, unbeknownst to him, but obviously to ourselves as the audience, Fezco doesn't have the disc. Still, Cal arrives and receives a shotgun held up to his face for his troubles. The ashtray brings him inside and, after repeated bashes across the forehead, covering Nate's dad in a pool of blood, Fezco reveals more of what's actually going on here. He doesn't know about the disc, nor does Fezco know about Jules sleeping with Cal and it being recorded. After admitting he's not involved, Cal walks away, safe in the knowledge that Fezco is definitely telling the truth. Cal promises not to let Nate mess about with Fezco, Jules or Rue in the future. Stumbling out the front door, he heads home. Meanwhile, Rue strikes a deal with that dealer we saw on New Year's, Laurie. She decides to start selling drugs for her, showing up with a jacket and a big pitch as if it's a proper interview. Now Rue intends to sell drugs on a big scale at school, but that also comes with its own disadvantages, despite mentioning 3 girls who can help her. If Rue messes this up, Laurie promises to kidnap her and worse. Well, no pressure then. Now as the episode closes out, Nate collects up a bouquet of flowers and prepares to meet Cassie for their usual weekly booty call. Only, he doesn't show. Instead, he messages Cassie to tell her something has come up and appears at Maddie's door while she's babysitting instead. Episode 4 of Euphoria Season 2 begins with Rue reflecting on how much she loves Jules. Through a series of reenacted love scenes, we see the pair's affection for one another. Brokeback Mountain, Titanic and even Sleeping Beauty are depicted here. Unfortunately, Rue's feelings are completely muddied by being high on drugs. Now while Jules is going down on her, Rue fakes an orgasm. Jules knows, of course she knows, and naturally she heads off and speaks to Elliot about it. Jules starts to doubt herself, so Elliot shows her how it's done by practicing on his hand. Unfortunately, this also leads to the pair kissing until Rue messages and confirms she's outside. Jules is clearly conflicted over her true feelings, breathing heavily while lying on Elliot's bed. And even worse, when Rue goes to the bathroom, the pair end up kissing again. There are so many lies between these 3, and the biggest lie of all comes in the form of a 2-inch long line across the sink basin. While Rue continues to do drugs, Elliot meanwhile does not. He actually blows his line away. Meanwhile, the situation between Cassie and Maddie continues to grow ever more volatile. While Nate can keep his feelings buried, his body language says otherwise. Folded arms, standoffish and avoiding Maddie's eye contact, his robotic response to why he loves her speaks volumes. Cassie, however, is far less nonchalant. She painfully smiles through Maddie's birthday and she's racked with guilt the whole time. Cassie's drama stems from Nate's feelings and specifically how she'll do anything to make sure he and Maddie don't get back together. Cassie essentially blackmails Nate into a relationship, warning Nate that she's crazier than Maddie and will happily tell her best friend everything. Even his strained "I love you" doesn't do the trick. Now at Maddie's party, Maddie speaks to Kat, who's clearly depressed. Kat admits that she hates Ethan and isn't quite sure what to do. So Maddie tells her she needs to do what she feels is right and admits she had a feeling things weren't right between them. Speaking of not right, Cal, sporting a bandaged head, goes out for a drive while drinking. It's reckless, dangerous and bound to end in tears. Drunk, he shows up at the old bar he frequented as a student, reminiscing on the precious moments with Derek from the past. While he puts the song on and dances, an absolutely beautiful montage ensues, with Cal dancing and Cassie losing control, unbeknownst to her that she's being watched while she dances in a bathing suit in the lounge. Speaking of tears, the Rue, Elliot, Jules situation takes a turn for the worst. After doing drugs earlier on, Rue starts drinking in the car. Now, given she's in rehab and apparently sober, at least in the eyes of everyone around her, it all goes awry. In fact, Rue tells Jules that she can't stand her in a really heartbreaking moment. The thing is, Rue's problems are about to get a whole lot worse. At home, she starts popping pills from the suitcase. The same suitcase she's supposed to be selling gear from. The back of the party, everyone gets in the hot tub, including Nate and Cassie. Things take an awkward turn when Maddie reveals they're not in a relationship. Now all the words Maddie taunts him with are unceremoniously interrupted by Cassie, who ends up vomiting in the hot tub. And all over Nate, Maddie and Kat. The Cat was kicked out the bar for trying to wrestle the patrons, and eventually gets back in his car, tears stinging his eyes, and heads home. The Cow begins urinating all over the floor, and with his family watching on, Cow snaps and admits that Marsha is his biggest regret and that as a family they all have secrets. When the attention turns to Nate, he claims his entire life is a mystery. Interestingly, he has the family portrait under his arm the whole time that he's speaking. And with that, he leaves and decides not to return. Meanwhile, Elliot reveals the truth to Jules about Rue. He's had enough of lying and drops the news about how Rue hasn't been sober all this time. And worse, she's taking every drug under the sun. As we jump back to Rue, we dive into her psyche and specifically how dangerously close she is to having another overdose. She misses her father, and as the pair subconsciously embrace, it's clear he's the catalyst for Rue's misery and depression. She's taking drugs recklessly to try and be closer to her dad, whom she believes is on the other side. With Jules one of the sole reasons she's continuing on, how is that going to play out now that Jules knows the truth? Episode 5 of Euphoria Season 2 starts at Rue's house as Leslie confronts Rue over taking pills. The Rue puts up a big defense and plays it cool, and when she finds out Jules is who told her, her entire complexion changes. Rue threatens her mum, blames her for suicidal thoughts, and even rasps that she's not a good person. With Gia and Leslie in the former's bedroom, Rue is a woman possessed. She's desperate to find her pills, and between kicking down Gia's door and turning the house inside out, her anger turns to despair when she realises the pills have been flushed down the toilet. And the kaleidoscope of emotion Rue goes through in this scene is nothing short of incredible. And if that wasn't enough, Jules and Elliot happen to be in the living room and have heard everything. Now Rue turns her anger across to Jules, calling their entire time together a mistake and lashing out in a pretty horrible way. Now Elliot feels the guilt rise up and eventually leaves, wishing for the old Rue to come back. Rue meanwhile breaks down and admits to Leslie she misses her dad, agreeing eventually to go to rehab. En route though, Rue admits nonchalantly that she relapsed the minute she got out of rehab last time. When a moment of clarity returns to Rue, she suddenly skips out the car and runs away, dodging traffic and ending up at Lexi's house, looking the worse for wear. Her mum is polite enough but knows instantly she's not doing well. Now when Rue uses her bathroom, she warns Lexi as much in confidence. Rue immediately begins looking for pills in the cupboard, but when she settles on pawning jewellery instead, she sneaks downstairs and finds Leslie there along with everyone else. Concerned looks on faces abound. Now when Cassie tries to speak up, Rue deflects and asks her how long she's been screwing Nate. Good grief. Maddie kicks off at Cassie, threatening to get violent. The adults struggle to keep everything together, but when Cassie rushes upstairs and Maddie follows, Rue slips out the front door and tries to find solitude with Fezco. An addict will do anything for a fix, of course, and it doesn't take long for Rue to begin searching through his stash of pills. So naturally, Fezco kicks her out too. Rue eventually resorts to robbing a rich couple in town, snatching up their jewellery and cash. And as she heads out into the streets again, she evades police by hiding in a bin and shows up at Laurie's in an absolute state. She's yawning, clutching her stomach, and very clearly addicted. She tries to pay her way using jewellery and stolen cash, but that's not going to cut it here. Laurie knows all about addiction, pointing out she used to be addicted to OxyContin and understands what she's going through. Although she acts sympathetically, there's a chilling undercurrent of uneasiness in this entire conversation. And when Laurie casually suggests that, as a woman, she does have something people want, it should ring alarm bells. She's implying that Rue take to the street and work as a sex worker. Anyway, Laurie takes her to the bath, undresses her and injects the girl with morphine. Rue drifts in and out of consciousness, returning to memories involving her father as a child. Unfortunately, Laurie also locks her in the house, leading Rue to creep through the hallways in the early morning hours and make it out in one piece. If she hadn't got out now, who knows what may have happened to her. Episode 6 of Euphoria Season 2 starts with Rue back home, handling a Jolly Rancher and breathing deeply. She's got withdrawal symptoms, but Leslie is there to help for the time being, at least until a bed is available at the rehab centre. Unfortunately, there's a solid week before that happens, meaning Rue is going to have to try and weather the storm back home. While Gia and Leslie both take it in turns to try and be there for her, Rue reflects on the mistakes she's made. Specifically, she hovers over lashing out at Ali, and eventually she rings him to apologise. It's a deep, profuse sorry, and one that sees him forgive her, and even head over with a bag full of groceries later on. In confidence, he encourages Gia to channel her anger, believing it would be good for her. Meanwhile, things are a roller coaster ride of emotion over at Nate's place. With Cal now gone and Nate having won the dick swinging contest, Nate's concerns turn to Maddie. With no messages or calls from her on his phone, he's worried over what she may have planned. Well, according to Maddie, it's murder. The girl on the other end of the phone happens to be Kat, who heads out on a date with Ethan. Well, date may be a bit of a stretch here. He's not happy he's had to cancel band practice for this, but shows up all the same. The outcome of their meet sees Ethan and Kat break up, although Kat is pretty nonchalant about the whole thing. Between the Maddie and Cassie drama, Lexi turns to Fezco for comfort. The pair bond well, with the former wondering whether to even continue putting on her play or not. She's stuck right in the middle of this conflict too, eventually calling out Cassie's melodramatic rant. Holding a corkscrew, she bemoans that she doesn't want to live anymore. Now Cassie's pity me attitude is something that she likens to Rue, although her mum is quick to dispel that comparison. Rue has had a hard life, while Cassie meanwhile has definitely not. At least not in her eyes anyway. Now Maddie heads over to her babysitting gig and winds up talking and drinking with Samantha, the woman whose house this belongs to. She admits she's done the same thing to one of her girlfriends, allowing Maddie to see things from a slightly different perspective. Still, it's not going to change her depression, which continues to swell. Now over at the Jacobs household, Nate finds himself in a whirlwind of emotion too. That tornado happens to be his mother, who's completely spinning out of control. She discusses how Nate's personality changed and how he darkened when he turned 8 or 9. For Nate though, he realises he needs to take action, and that comes from stealing Cal's gun and getting back the disc no matter what. After all, if it gets out that Cal is a PDF, that too would reflect badly on Nate and potentially destroy the integrity of the business. With a gun in hand, Nate heads over to Maddie's place, hiding in her room and waiting for her to return. He's not there for an apology though, he just wants the disc. After a particularly tense game of Russian roulette, Maddie breaks and admits it's in her purse. It turns out this is all one big bluff, given there were no bullets in the gun to begin with. However, Nate leaves Maddie in a broken mess on the bed, takes a disc and rocks up at Jules' house. He hands it over to her. With the situation resolved, Nate finally rings Cassie back and decides to pick her up. With her mum watching from the living room, Cassie packs up her things and decides to stay at Nate's. Then meanwhile, the episode closes at Rue's house. Rue wants to get clean, but Gia is not so sure she'll follow through this time. She's heard it numerous times and by now it's falling on deaf ears. With the chances slim that she'll succeed, Ali tells them all that Rue needs to find that hope for herself. Now while Gia and Rue sleep, Leslie learns that Rue isn't going to rehab. Leslie gives a teary confession on the phone, urging them to reconsider and believing Rue is going to kill herself. Episode 7 of Euphoria Season 2 sees Lexi take centre stage as her long-awaited play finally begins, opening with Rue's father's funeral, which frames everything we're about to see. From the outset, it's clear that this isn't just a performance, it's a retelling of Lexi's life and, by extension, everyone else's too. The play quickly moves through Lexi's childhood, showing her growing up in the shadow of Rue. We see their friendship in its early innocent stages before Rue's addiction begins to take hold. She's still doing drugs, but she's not a full-on addict just yet. Lexi positions herself as the observer here, always present but rarely the focus, watching life unfold around her rather than actively shaping it. Now as the scenes continue, the play shifts into more recent memories. Cassie's relationship history is laid bare on stage, with exaggerated but recognisable versions of her past romances. Sitting in the audience, Cassie begins to realise she's the subject of the performance, and her discomfort grows with each passing scene. Meanwhile, Rue watches from the crowd in a much calmer state than before. Instead of reacting defensively to seeing herself depicted on stage, she seems to understand what Lexi is trying to do. The play's portrayal of friendship hits hard, but Rue accepts it, even finding moments of quiet reflection in how she's depicted. Now, this is pretty much spelled out through a chat with Fezco on the phone that works as an interlude to what's happening on stage. Fezco is obviously not at the play, which we'll get to in the next episode, which breaks Lexi's heart when she realises he's not there. Now, back to the play though, the tone sharpens as we edge closer to the present day drama. A particularly bold sequence mirrors the hypersexualized nature of the cheerleaders, with both Maddie and Cassie in particular not happy at seeing how they're portrayed up on stage. In the audience, tensions begin to boil over. Cassie, having already been on edge at seeing most of the play, becomes increasingly emotional as the play reflects her current situation. The line between performance and reality starts to blur, with the characters on stage mirroring the reactions unfolding in real time with the situation involving Nate. Cassie can't watch anymore and heads out to the bathroom to compose herself. As for Nate, he struggles to see what a loving family looks like for Rue's parents up on stage, given his own volatile situation back home with Cal. Now, a particularly bold sequence mirrors the hyper-masculine culture of the football team, complete with a stylised locker room dance number, as Marta tells them they look gay while working out. The implication is clear, and Nate immediately takes offence, storming out of the auditorium as the performance pushes too close to home. Now, as the episode draws to a close, the play is still ongoing, but the damage has already been done. Nate demands Cassie get out of his house, and he storms out of school. With relationships exposed, insecurities laid bare, and the entire room feeling on the verge of erupting, Cassie is beside herself with rage. Everything is set up for a fallout, one that's clearly not going to stay confined to the stage. Episode 8 of Euphoria Season 2 starts with Fezco about to head out and watch Lexi's play. However, his world is turned upside down when Custer inquires about news of Mouse's body. Realising he may have been compromised, Ash pounces on him and stabs his neck. Now, Fezco handles his phone quietly, realising he's been compromised, and quickly places it in a cup of juice by the sink. This tense scene is then juxtaposed by flashbacks of Fezco and Lexi talking together about their interests and life in general. Now, Fezco's outlook on life is one that's refreshingly simple and far away from today's increasingly digitalised world. This also does well to show how these two are worlds apart. Unfortunately, Custer's death means he's going to miss Lexi's show. Now at the theatre, things take an awful turn when Cassie shows up and marches onto the stage. She calls out Lexi for living in her shadow and embraces her sister in front of everyone. The crowd are incredulous, unsure whether this is part of the show or an improvised disaster. Of course, Maddie calls her out for being a cheater, cursing her and eventually rushing up onto stage. The two girls scramble backstage, where Kat follows along and tries to stop them. Now, another person at the theatre, watching all this take place, is Rue. She's doing better now than she was, and this play, seeing herself projected up on stage, has done wonders to give her some much needed self-reflection. As we soon see, Rue actually headed to Elliot's place several days earlier and thanked him for ratting her out when he did. If he hadn't, Rue admits she probably wouldn't be there. So Elliot plays an overlong song, Can You Not Please, on his guitar, before leaving the question of whether they can ever be friends hanging in the air without a definitive answer. It's fair to say he'll be integral to the plot going forward, but hopefully without a 5-minute guitar session this time. Now, Lexi salvages her play, partly thanks to chants of Lexi from the audience. She also dedicates part of her play to Fezco, as we cut back to his apartment and see that all hell has broken loose. Fezco tells Ash to leave, and he's going to protect his little brother and take the fall for Custer's death. Ash refuses though, and instead grabs a gun, holding up in the bathroom. Fezco pleads with his brother not to shoot, but soon police bust into the apartment and raid the place. While Fezco, still holding the bloodied knife, is compliant and drops to his knees, Ash does not. He sprays the hallway with bullets, and one of them hits Fezco, who starts bleeding out. Now, Ash plays possum and then kills one of the cops in cold blood, which in turn sees him shot in the head. Fezco can only watch in horror. Meanwhile, Nate finds Cal partying with a bunch of kids. After pouring himself a drink, he calls out Cal for being happy and points a gun at him, telling him he wants revenge. Now, with glimmers of the USB stick in hand, cars approach, followed by red and blue lights through the window as the police arrive at the scene. Nate has decided not to protect his father after all, and in doing so condemns him to a fate behind bars. After Lexi's play, Jules heads over to Rue and tells her she misses and loves her. Rue leans over and kisses her on the forehead before walking away. As we've seen here from narration, Rue actually stayed clean for the rest of the school year, and although she's unsure whether she'll stick to this, after making peace with her father's death, she's definitely in a better place, leaving everything wide open as season 2 comes to an end. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.